Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. IRS releases state-by-state breakdown of nearly 9 million non-filers who will be mailed letters about economic impact payments. IR 2020-214, September 17, 2020, Washington. The Internal Revenue Service today released a state-by-state breakdown of the roughly 9 million people receiving a special mailing this month, encouraging them to see if they're eligible to claim an economic impact payment. So they're still trying to reach out to the people that might not have claimed an economic impact payment, but who have eligibility to do so. Now, the people that would get the letter, then you would think then, would be people that obviously the payment has not yet gone out to. People that the payment has gone out to, the IRS has been able to do basically automatically based on the prior year filings, 2018, 2017, even though the economic payment is tied to 2020. Even if someone did not file, if they're receiving some kind of benefits such as Social Security, then the IRS still tried to pick them up and send out a letter. However, if there's no filing and they don't have a sufficient information for something like the Social Security payments, then there's going to be a significant amount of people that may still not be getting their economic impact payment. So they're pushing to see if they can reach those people now with these letters to see if they can get that economic impact payment out. So the IRS will mail the letters to people who typically aren't required to file federal income tax returns but may qualify for an economic impact payment. So notice almost anybody that has a Social Security number here, unless you're basically a dependent being claimed on some other tax return, will typically be qualify for an economic impact payment. So there's many people that are under the threshold of needing to file a tax return and may not be getting some other kind of payment that would not have then been picked up by the IRS in order to receive the economic impact payment. Those are the people they're looking for right now. And you might be asking, well, how would the IRS even know who these people are if they don't have the tax return and there's no other government payment they're getting? They often have little pieces of information because remember, any tax information that you have will typically be sent to the IRS. Anything that goes to you like a W-2, 1099 will be also sent to the IRS. That's what it's doing. So the IRS might have some like information like a mailing address and some bit of tax information, but not enough to basically process the economic impact payment upon and possibly use that information in order to reach out to these individuals. So back to the text, the letter urges recipients to visit the special non-filer interpayment info here. There's a link to that tool on the IRS.gov website before October 15th deadline to register for the economic impact payment. So they've pushed out the deadline till October 15th. So if you fall into this category, and again, it's most people don't, because if you file the tax return or if you get some payments from the Social Security or some other government benefits, then it's quite likely that the IRS already processed the economic impact payments. But if you don't fall into that category, if you know someone that doesn't fall into that category, then they'd want to use this tool, and they want to do it by October 15th, because if they don't, then they got to wait till they file the tax return for 2020, which won't be done until 2021, and that will be more burdensome to do in any case because these people probably don't file tax returns. So it would be easier to use the non-filer tool because they're not required to file a tax return, and this one will have it won't have the income information. It should be easier to do than to file a tax return, and it should be something that could be done earlier to get the payment soon. Quote, the IRS continues to work hard to reach people eligible for these payments, end quote, said IRS Commissioner Chuck Rettig. Quote, these mailings are the latest step by the IRS to reach as many people as possible for these important payments. We are releasing this step-by-step information so that state and local leaders and organizations can better understand the size of this population in their communities and assist them in claiming these important payments. Time is running out to claim a payment before the deadline, end quote. These letters, and there's a link to the letter here if you want to take a look at what it looks like, are part of a final stage of the IRS's sweeping outreach and public awareness campaign on the economic impact payments that began in March. These efforts include IRS outreach to thousands of partner groups across the nation, including partner groups serving underserved communities, people experiencing homelessness, and those whose primary language is not English. So far, more than 7 million people have already used the non-filer tool to register for a payment. This month's letter delivered from the IRS address are being sent to people who haven't filed a return for either 2018 or 2019. So that's going to be the baseline here, right? You haven't filed the return, and they haven't sent out a payment based on some other means of being able to process the economic impact payment. Based on an internal analysis, these are people who don't typically have a tax return filing requirement because they appear to have very low incomes based on W-2 and 1099 and other third-party statements available to the IRS. So the IRS is saying, hey, we got some information for these people, including W-2s and 1099s. We didn't get a tax return from them. We're assuming that that's because, this is me paraphrasing what I believe what their thought process is. We're assuming that that's because they're under the threshold to need to be filing a tax return. So we didn't get a tax return, and we don't have any other kind of information to base the economic impact payment on, such as Social Security benefits or whatnot. But we do have this piece of information, which includes their mailing address. So possibly we could send out these letters and ask them to provide us the information necessary to process the economic impact payment from there. So the breakdown below shows the number of individuals in each state to whom the IRS is sending a letter. The letter urges the recipient to register at IRS.gov by October 15th in order to receive a payment by the end of the year. Individuals can receive up to $1,200. That's going to be the economic impact payment, $1,200. And married couples can receive $2,400. People with qualified children under 17 at the end of 2019 can get up to an additional $500 for each qualifying child. The letter, officially known as IRS Notice 1444A, is written in English, Spanish, and includes information on eligibility criteria. If they haven't done so already, this letter urges eligible individuals to register using free non-filer interpayment info tool. There's a link to that here, available in English and Spanish only on IRS.gov website, IRS.gov website. To help address fraud concerns, a copy of the letter, there's a link to that here, is available on IRS.gov. The IRS cautions that receiving a letter is not a guarantee of eligibility. So if you get a letter, it basically means the IRS has this piece of information about you, right? And then they're sending out the letter because of basically the information we just looked at. They got some piece of information, has the address, they don't have a tax return, and they haven't been able to process the economic impact payment thus far. So it doesn't mean that you're necessarily eligible to receive the economic impact payments, but it looks like, based on the information they have, that you possibly may be, and that's why they're going to send it out. So an individual is likely eligible for an economic impact payment if they are a U.S. citizen or resident alien, have work-eligible Social Security number, and can't be claimed as a dependent on someone else's federal income tax return. For more information on eligibility requirements, see Economic Impact Payment Eligibility FAQs, otherwise known as Frequently Asked Questions, on IRS.gov, IRS.gov website. The registration deadline for non-filers can claim an economic impact payment through the non-filer tool is October 15, 2020. People who are eligible should not wait to receive a letter and should register now. So obviously you don't need the letter in order to go there. So if you think you fall into this category, then you want to do that and use this tool in order to process the information. Alternatively, people can wait until next year and claim the recovery rebate credit on their 2020 federal income tax return by filing in 2021. So if you don't get the credit for whatever reason and you're eligible to do so, then you can simply file your 2020 tax return. However, that's going to happen in 2021 because this credit is actually tied to the 2020 tax return that's going to be filed in 2021. The IRS is simply trying to get the payments out earlier, basing that information then on prior periods. Now, if you're in one of these groups that you haven't received a payment and you should have, then you may not be filing a 2020 return because the assumption is your income or the income might be below the necessary level to do so based on the fact that prior year tax returns haven't been filed for it. So it would be more burdensome to do so, to file an actual tax return, than to use the tool to just give the IRS the information, you would think. So the IRS emphasizes that anyone required to file either a 2018 or 2019 tax return should file their tax return, not use the non-filer tool. So note that there could be many people in this group that basically, that didn't file 2018, didn't file 2019, and didn't get any other benefits that the IRS could have based the economic impact payment on, who actually were required to file the 2018 or 2019 because their income was above the threshold to do so, and they just didn't. That's different than not being required to do so. If they just didn't file the tax return, then you don't want to use this tool, because that's going to confuse the IRS. The tool's only used for people that aren't required to file the tax return, just to give the information needed. If you need to file the tax return but just haven't, then you should file the tax return, because if you do both, you're going to confuse the IRS, and confusing the IRS just causes you problems. So that tool is designed for people with incomes typically below $24,400 for married couples and $12,200 for single. So if your wages are below the $12,200 or $24,400 for married, then you would typically think that you wouldn't need to file because you wouldn't be owing any taxes. So that's typically going to be the threshold on which you don't need to file. Doesn't mean you don't want to file, by the way. If you happen to have incomes below $12,200, $24,400, because you still might get a refund of any withholdings you had, plus any kind of refundable credits, such as an earned income credit or a child tax credit. So just because you may be below this level doesn't mean you don't want to file, but you're not required to file under that level. So this includes people and individuals who are experiencing homelessness. Those unable to access the non-filer tool may submit a simplified paper return following the procedure described in the Economic Impact Payment FAQ's frequently asked questions on IRS.gov. People can qualify for a payment even if they don't work or have no earned income. But low and moderate income workers and working families eligible to receive special tax benefits such as the Earned Income Tax Credit or Child Tax Credit cannot use this tool. So if you want to claim those credits, which can be significant, then you got to file the tax returns to do so. And if you're going to file the tax returns, then you don't want to use this tool, because this tool is used for the people that don't file tax returns because they're not required to and don't want to, because they're not going to be qualifying for the earned income or child tax credit. Because if you qualify for those could be significant again, and you'd want to file, you probably want to file the tax return if you can under that circumstance. So they will need to file a regular tax return as soon as possible. The IRS will use their tax return information to determine and issue any economic impact payment for which they are eligible. Anyone using the non-filer tool can speed up the arrival of their payment by choosing to receive it by direct deposit. Those not choosing this option will get a check. Beginning 2 weeks after the register, people can track the status of their payment using the Get My Payment tool. There's a link to that here, available on IRS.gov website. Then they have a breakdown of the state postal code, and the total number of economic impact payments information that is going out here. So if you wanted to take a look at their table broken down by state, you can do so here. We will provide a link to this in the information so you could take a look at it. For more information on the economic impact payment, including updates, answers, and frequently asked questions and other resources, visit irs.gov/coronavirus. There's a link to that here. There'll be a link to this in the description.